Good day. Thank you for joining us again. We're having a great time back here in South Africa. My wife and I just arrived a few days ago, and it's springtime here, and it's just so beautiful, and lots of wonderful things are going on. And I appreciate all of you tuning in now and again and just hearing about African adventures that people have with me, Dr. Blessman, and also with our ministry and our son, Dustin. So just lots and lots of amazing things happening. Today, we're joined by a very special guest that'll have a little bit of a different story than I think most of you are used to, because most of you are hearing from American mission team members who are over here on a short term mission trip and they have an adventure in Africa. But our guest today is his name is Doug Keiser. He's been a friend of mine for a while. We met on Zoom several months ago, planning his experience here. And he is part of a short term mission team from his church, Trinity Church in Waterloo, Cedar Falls area. And this is, I think, that church's third team over with us. But it's Doug's first experience with our ministry, but in no way is it his first experience in Africa. So, Doug, would you introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit about you, your wife, your church, your community, and then we'll just delve in from there.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's great to be here. Doug Keiser, I'm a physiotherapist or physical therapist, as they say in the States, by background. And I attend Trinity Bible Church in Cedar Falls, Iowa, currently, and we're really blessed to be over here with you now. My experience from Africa dates back to when I was a young boy, first through third grade, where my folks were serving in medical missions. My father was a primary care physician with the Mennonite Church, and so I had a chance to go over there and live out a commitment from my father. That was during the Vietnam War, and he had, he was draftable out of medical school. He happened to be a conscientious objector, and so there was options for a person like that. One of them was 2 years of voluntary service, but he felt so strongly about his conviction to serve. He didn't want to just do the minimum, so he committed to 3 years of voluntary service at that time. Started out with a little language school in Belgium to pick up French, because at that time Algeria was just coming out of independence, and required to speak French there as opposed to Arabic, which is a much harder language to pick up. So I went to preschool kindergarten there in Belgium, French school, and then we headed over to Algeria at that point in time and spent 2 years there. And then following that 2 years, there was some, disharmony within the government. They wanted the expats out at that time, and so they still had a year left. And so, well, where could we serve? And so then we went down to Tanzania at that point in time. So I've got two different experiences there. And then again in high school, I was a junior to be, and my dad said, "Hey, I think we're called to go back to Africa." They asked a number of families to return, and so then I had opportunity to return again as a junior in high school, which was very affirming because we went back to the same location that we had finished out there in East Africa. So that's the general background of where I've been. And so I don't know, we can start from there.
Well, and what was it like being a high school student in Africa? That's not an experience many of my listeners have had. So, what do you remember about that?
Well, first of all, I didn't want to go. I'm a junior in high school. Things are just laying out before you. You're starting to become an upperclassman, and there's a lot of opportunities. And I was going to give that up. But boy, after spending a year, I didn't want to return for my senior year. So that's
Wow.
how significant it was. A few of the significant things I remember. Well, certainly flying in. At that time, Mission Aviation Fellowship, coming into Nairobi, Kenya, and then flying across the border into Tanzania. And, the pilot making a run across the airport low pass just to make sure that the airport was the runway was clear of cattle and individuals that already hear the plane approaching. And then certainly when you land, boy, by the time you have come to a stop, you're surrounded at that point in time.
Yeah.
Certainly a plane gathered a lot of attention. This is back in 1979, 1980. So we were in the northern part of Tanzania along the shore of Lake Victoria. And so, that was a significant, just transportation was significant. And as a 17-year-old, I was given a lot of responsibility. There just weren't many drivers in those days. Vehicles were very hard to come by. Locals had not been trained in maintenance or in driving skills. And so as a 17-year-old, I actually had my international driver's license. And so they frequently asked me to make runs to go get the mail bag from the village or the nearest town where the mail came into. There was, at the local hospital we were at in Sharati, Tanzania, there was no regular post office. The mail came from Musoma, which was, I don't know exactly, maybe about 30, 40 kilometers away. And so if the mail hadn't been picked up for a week or two, well, they sent me to go
Yep.
get it and run some errands in the meantime. So I really appreciated the trust and responsibility that I was given by my parents and the mission community there. And it oftentimes meant picking up people or other vehicles. I remember getting on a plane and going over to Moshi Arusha, is where Mount Kilimanjaro is, to pick up a Land Rover, a refurbished Land Rover that had been brought there.
Oh, wow.
And then I drove that back across the Serengeti to get back to our local hospital. I remember another instance where I was bringing some nursing students across with one of the nursing supervisors who was a stateside nurse, and um, the woman was with the Mennonite Board of Missions there for quite some time, very fluent in the language, and I couldn't have made that trip without her, certainly as a 17-year-old. But we went and picked up 3 stateside nursing students and brought them over, and our camping involved camping overnight in the Serengeti that night. And she'd had some experience with lions, and they had pawed her tent at one point in time. So she was very leery. And there in the open plains, sound travels very well. So she was with the 3 female nursing students in the tent. I had hooked up a hammock from the Land Rover roof rack to a nearby tree. And every time she thought that the lion growl she was hearing was a little too close, I heard this zip, and then the pitter patter and the Land Rover door opening and getting in. And I was in the hammock, and so I could feel it rocking and going back and forth. And I think that happened 2 or 3 times that night. I didn't get the greatest night's sleep, but no lions pawed our tent. But boy, sound sure travels well out there.
Those had to have
Um,
been interesting, exciting times for you at an 18-year-old young man. I'd like to know a little more what you remember about your father's medical practice. I believe he was a country doctor, much like I have been. And I was just wondering, was he able to do some surgery and deliver babies here, or was it more just first aid? What do you know about the medical practice that he was able to do?
yeah. Well, it was certainly quite extensive. The first time we had been there, he had just completed a residency. So, um, here he was thrown into where you could see everything and anything.
Yeah.
Um, in Tanzania, what I remember of my junior year in high school, um, I mean, the electricity was on during the day when surgery was available. There was no local electricity, so had to go up and start up the diesel generator and get that running. And then people would come from far and wide. And unfortunately, healthcare frequently went through the local tribal physician first. And, when success really wasn't notable and there was no last resorts, oftentimes they would come to the hospital and frequently on the back of bicycles or would walk. And So I know that was hard for him. Things weren't diagnosed very early. So I remember one thing, Burkitt's lymphoma was a common disease there. And so,
Wow.
people would show up with their faces disfigured and they'd waited so long. And so some of the surgeries were very difficult. And I'm sure the results weren't oftentimes as easily rectified had they been able to come in much earlier. But oftentimes went through the local witch doctor. If that didn't quite work out, then they'd seek out regular health care at that point in time. But I know he dealt with a lot of ectopic pregnancies,
Oh, wow.
just things that you would not normally have seen um, stateside at all. And that was significant for me to be exposed to some of that. There was a leprosarium there, and we actually had classroom setting there in an empty room at the leprosarium. And so I would frequently, one of the big things was to come out during our school break was to come out, and I was taking correspondence courses, but there was a tutor available for us if we needed help, and would come out and play bead games with with those that were there at the leprosarium. And they just had nubbins for fingers, but boy, they could still move those beads around the bow board, as we called it. And that was significant for me. I was exposed to a physical therapist there who was making artificial limbs
Wow.
for these leprosy patients. And so that had a strong influence on what my eventual career would be, is to see how significant that could be. So I hope that answers a little bit of the questions. I think there's an interesting sidelight to that for my father. We had just arrived, and that the house next door, where a longtime physician who lives there full time, his wife was pouring some kerosene into their kerosene refrigerator. We think, well, how
Yeah.
do you use heat? Well, we plug in electricity and we use condensation to generate cold. There, they actually use an open flame uh, low underneath the refrigerator, where there's a tank that holds kerosene, and unfortunately, as it was placed back in, the kerosene had jostled, and so here you have an open flame underneath this refrigerator. And my father was trying to, well, this could maybe explode. Well, we found out later it's not. It's a lower density of energy, so it doesn't explode, but it certainly could have started the place on fire. And so, in his attempt to bring out the kerosene from underneath the refrigerator container, he accidentally sloshed some on his arm, and he's on fire. And I remember just running over to him and grabbing him and just rolling him on the ground and to try to put that. His arm was just on fire. That was within the first couple of days we were there, and that just set him back a couple of weeks, because he was all bandaged up and obviously very painful, and that'll be good for me to recollect that story with him. But they didn't have the narcotics or the drugs that we have now to kind of alleviate some of that pain. So I know that was
Yeah.
hard here to be there for a whole year, and then just to be set back. I mean, he just couldn't do much that first week or two. He was just in so much pain and dressing changes. So, and
Ooh.
you've got a bandage on your arm right now too, Doc. So I know that doctors make the absolute worst patients,
Oh, there's
both
no
in,
question about that. And my wife will verify that.
yeah. Um, just talking about the internet and communication, there was no phones there. And so to write letters, I remember even taking correspondence courses. When I completed a section, I was supposed to mail it back to the University of Nebraska and then get their results back of my tests before I went on to the next section. Well, it was over 2 weeks for a letter to get back home, and then it would be 2 weeks for them to reply to me. So I just ignored that rule and kept going. Um, but just communication. I know there was we had one physician there who was a ham radio enthusiast, and I don't know if enthusiast is a good word. He had been trained to operate the hand radio that was left there at the hospital.
Yeah.
And so to communicate stateside, they arranged by mail. Well, we're going to meet at this time, at this night, so whatever the time would be opposite around the world, plus 7 plus 8 hours, I guess, probably similar to what we are here in South Africa. And then they would get on the ham radio. And if atmospheric conditions were decent, we'd be able to connect by ham
Yeah.
radio. And so that would be how we get some communication, at least live communication, that didn't have to wait 2 weeks to get there and then 2 weeks to get back. Um, and then what that ham radio operator, I think he was in Pennsylvania, he had a dial-up situation. So he would make a phone call to wherever the needed party needed to go, and they'd put the phone in the cradle, and then you'd say, over, over, and then he would flip the switch so that obviously it wasn't a two-way, like we're talking here. You could either speak or you could listen. You couldn't do both. And so
Yep.
there was just a lot of complicated mechanisms to try to make connect with somebody stateside. But when the atmospheric conditions got through, that was a great thing. And I remember as a junior, there was one time when I was allowed to contact a friend, and that was amazing, just to be able to talk to one of my classmates who was halfway around the world. That was significant.
Oh, yeah. I'm so happy I'm called to be a missionary now and not a generation or two ago. Our life here on the mission field now is very plush and comfortable, and it's still a joy to be able to serve people that are very impoverished and just would be in a lot of trouble without what we're able to bring. You've got your wife here with you this time.
I
Tell
do.
us a little bit about the experience you've had. You've only been here a few days, but you've already had a few experiences. What are you finding now, many years later?
Well, in many ways, things don't change. We can talk about, well, yes, we have internet access here, and um, I think, technology wise, well, I guess two things here. One is just the ubiquitous of phones here. They may not have running water, um, don't have access to good sanitation or transportation, but here they have cell phone,
Yeah.
access to the world. And that's kind of mind-boggling for me. The implications on a culture, and it's not without a little bit of anxiety, I guess I have for the people here to have access to all the information, and yet not have access to what they see or what they might
Yeah.
find or desire. Um, so I'm thrilled. I've had a number of mission trips over to Africa, and my wife has never been able to come over. She comes from a strong mission back mission background herself. Her Well, if I can just share this, her father is from China. Her mother is from Japan. Two very diametrically different non-Christian cultures, and
Yeah.
yet as believers, they met in at Asbury Seminary in Kentucky, and out of that union produced my wife. But he came over as a connection from, and I don't know if I can get quite the number of greats, but Hudson Taylor, the great noted missionary from China. His great great grandson's wife was instrumental in connecting with my father-in-law,
Huh.
Jonathan Liu, and was able to arrange a scholarship for him to come study in Kentucky. So my wife has never been to Africa, and
Wow.
so it's been a delight for her to be here, and certainly she knows how meaningful this place is to me, this continent is to me, and so I really appreciate the opportunity. And it was her suggestion to come, so
Ah, that's
it's even
great.
more of a blessing. So, and she's had a great time. yeah, a lot of smiles, a lot of great time interacting with people. She had a delightful time talking with the ladies that were here to pick up all the food for the local creches, the local nurseries surrounding here. And in fact, we had to go find her when it was time to leave. Where's Caroline? We had to go find her. And here she was uh, talking off with the mamas in a corner of the field there. So that was great to see.
Yeah. And tomorrow you get to put your skills as a physical therapist to work. I'm anxious to see the reaction you get because the impoverished people here just have minimal opportunity to ever see a physical therapist. So it's going to be a huge blessing to at least a few people. I wish we had you here for many weeks, but we'll get what we can out of you for the few days you have left with us.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been praying about that. It's a challenging environment for a physical therapist to come in one time and then go. I mean, I think certainly education is a significant portion, but I know the needs are great, and these aren't your simple. Well, I got a backache last week moving some extra furniture or uh, pulling some extra harvest out of the garden. No, these are. I'm sure I'll see things that people have been struggling with for years, and
Yeah.
yeah,
You
that's
may see some of those. You may see some of those short-term aches and pains with our staff, and I bet they're going to put you to work too. But with the nationals, the Black impoverished South African people, they need you for years. But I know you'll be able to teach them some things. And we got some people that are quite interested in learning from you. And I hopefully will be able to continue some of the things that you get started.
yeah. Now that'll be great. I'm just thankful to be here, and yeah, and just looking forward to seeing what the interest is. Like you said, those that are interested in carrying on, helping in the future, that's really what's probably the most important thing. I think the team is really impressed with just how welcoming and how joyful people are. We look around and see lack of, and yet they are filled with. And I think that's really taken the team a little bit by surprise. Uh, just having stuff doesn't make you joyful. And so, community, relationship, uh, connection, they don't have the distractions that we do. I think they can focus more on relationship. I'm talking about, the local South Africans. Yes, there's significant needs. Yes, there's things that can be strongly improve their conditions, their lives, save them energy, uh, but yet they're still a joyful people, and they're willing to show that. Yeah. Well, I think in general, the world is an incredible, diverse place. God is doing amazing things around the world, and certainly here in Africa, there's so many needs, and I just really appreciated seeing directly here these last few days just what the Blessing Organization has done to meet the basic needs of people, and then to take it a step further and meet their spiritual needs. We've had a chance to worship. We've had a chance to go to some high schools, speak the name of Jesus openly and freely, and just being so well received. And that's just such a that just warms my heart. It's an encouragement, and I'm just so thankful to be able to see it, and certainly would hope that in many ways, if you will, God would do a work like that in America too, like He's doing
Oh,
here.
that's my
I'll leave
prayer
it
as
at that.
well. All
Thank
right.
you, God.
Thank you for joining us today. And to our audience, thank you so much for coming back faithfully every week or two and hearing about our adventures here in Africa. We'll keep doing the best to share interesting, amazing stories from here in Africa. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.